Hello and welcome back to the Spiritual Gangster Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Piraldi, and I'm really glad you've landed here today. Whether you're listening while you're driving somewhere you don't fully feel ready for yet, or folding laundry that never seems to end, or out on a walk trying to clear your head after one of those days, I want you to take a breath with me before we go any further. Because today's episode might land a little closer to home. Today we're talking about something that quietly holds so many people back. Even the strong ones. Even the self-aware ones. Even the people who know better. You are not your past versions. Not the one who didn't speak up. Not the one who stayed too long. Not the one who didn't know what you know now. Not the one who made choices just to survive. And yet, so many of us are still living as if we need permission to move on from who we used to be. Let's talk about that. The invisible weight of past versions. Growth doesn't just require effort, it requires release. And not just releasing people, habits, or situations, but releasing old identities. Past versions of yourself can become invisible anchors. They show up as thoughts like, well, this is just how I am. I've always been bad at that. I don't trust myself because I didn't before. Most of the time, those beliefs were formed by someone doing the best they could with the limited information, limited capacity, and limited support. That version of you wasn't weak, they were learning. But somewhere along the way, we started treating our past selves like life sentences instead of chapters. You evolved, but your mind might not have caught up yet. You can outgrow a certain version of yourself and still be emotionally loyal to them. We stay loyal to old identities because they feel familiar, because they explain why things didn't work out, because they protect us from disappointment by keeping expectations low. But familiarity is not the same as truth. You might still think like someone who didn't trust themselves, even though you've made aligned decisions since then. You might still hesitate like someone who was once afraid, even though you already survived what you thought would break you. Your nervous system may still be catching up with who you've already become. That doesn't mean you're stuck. It means you're human. Stop asking your past self for permission. So many people are waiting for their past versions to approve their future. Replaying old decisions, revisiting old mistakes, rehearsing old shame. As if one day that version of you is going to say, okay, now you're allowed to want more. That permission doesn't come from the past, it comes from the present. From the version of you who knows more, feels deeper, and chooses differently. Your past self didn't fail you, they prepared you. But they don't get to run the show anymore. Reframing the story you tell about yourself. Honoring your growth doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. It means changing the meaning you assign to it. You didn't stay because you were weak. You stayed because you didn't yet know your worth. You didn't ignore your intuition. Your intuition was still learning how to speak loudly. You didn't should have known better. You learned better. Those aren't excuses. They're accurate reflections of where you were at that time. When you reframe your past with honesty instead of judgment, you stop using it as evidence against yourself. You stop dragging old versions of yourself into rooms that they no longer belong in. That shift isn't fluffy mindset work, it's identity repair. You don't owe consistency to outdated versions of yourself. You do not owe anyone consistency with a version of yourself that no longer exists. Not your family, not your friends, not people who only know you in survival mode. Not even the version of you who made promises based on fear. Growth often looks like inconsistency to people who benefited from your old patterns. But you're not inconsistent, you're integrating. And that's not something to apologize for. There's a kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need to explain or prove. It shows up when you stop over-explaining your growth, stop defending your boundaries, and trust your decisions without narrating them. That's not arrogance, that's self-trust catching up to lived experience. You are allowed to be new. You're allowed to change without explaining it. You're allowed to evolve without revisiting every old decision. You're allowed to trust yourself again, even if you once didn't. Your past versions don't disappear, they integrate. They become wisdom, they become depth, they become strength, but they do not get to define your future. So I want you to hear this now. You are not your past versions. You are the proof that growth is possible. And the strongest thing that you can do is live like that's true. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, stay grounded, stay gentle, and keep living like the spiritual gangster you are.